right, back again. So this is Wednesday? I guess it's February 2nd. And today we're going to talk about orchestral strings. So this is the sound pack roundup. Basically what I'm doing, I'm going through all my packs. I've got Ableton 11 Suite. These are sound packs I've accumulated over the years. A lot of them just came with my licenses. I never use them, I admit, because I don't really know what they're good for. I don't really have enough intimate knowledge of them to use them, right? So there's like one or two packs I know really well. I use them all the time. A lot that I never use. So I've been working on an orchestral cue, and I wanted to kind of dig in. I've got Contact. I've got a lot of great sounding string libraries that I have good success with in Cubase and in Machine. But I've never really used the orchestral stuff from Ableton. I wanted to dig into it. So let's see. Everything looks pretty good. So I'm going to switch over to my Mac here and get out of there and look at this. Okay, so we're just looking at basically the Ableton web page. This is where I always like to start. See, what do they think of it? What do they think I should be doing with this, right? So the tags, one of the first things I look at over here. Tags, orchestral strings, those are their tags. Obviously, you know, it's called orchestral strings. Obviously, it's orchestral and it's string related. So they say comprehensive selection of naturally rich and dynamic stringed instruments. Okay, so this is not going to work for digital, industrial, experimental, might work in some contexts like that, you know, if they're highly affected, maybe sampled, resampled, chopped up, you know, manipulated in some way. But what this is going for is like actually authentic orchestral string sound. So probably a good match for, you know, what I'm trying to do here in this cue that I'm working on. So let's see, features solo and ensemble, viola, cello, violin, double bass. So that's a good collection in terms of you know, a range of instruments. That's good. All recorded in natural positions within the orchestra, complete with a number of articulations. So articulations are really important. That would be like pizzicato, sforzando. I have to see, you know, maybe if they handle key switches or that kind of thing. However, that might work. I'm not sure really if that's in there, but we'll see how they render out those articulations. Normally, like in a Contact library, articulations like Pizzicato or something is managed with key switches on your keyboard. Maybe in this situation it's a key switch, maybe it is just a different device chain, something like that. I'm not sure. Let's see, I'm just going to kind of scan through the rest of this text here. Kind of redundant, created in cooperation with Sonobox, decent library manufacturer, samples recorded using classical players, recruited the Boston Pops. So, I mean, you know, these are professional players, high quality, good recordings. So they're really aiming, you know, here probably to give Ableton users some kind of legitimate package for doing strings. In the world of doing symphonic music, you know, I'll say that there is a strong compulsion to make things sound as realistic as possible. And sometimes you'd be amazed, like the average person on the street couldn't tell the difference between one of these sound libraries and the real thing. But people who are professional in the industry really definitely can. So you want to be able to put a lot of work into not just creating your melody and your harmony and your phrasings and all that stuff, but you then go back and you do everything you can to possibly make these sampled sounds sound not sampled, sound real. That takes quite a lot of work. So let's go back and just look at this key features list here. All instruments meticulously multi-sampled. So multi-sampled, for those who might not know, That means that different samples are gonna be triggered for different velocity levels. Gives you much more subtlety and nuance because the way that a bow moves across the string at a low intensity versus a high intensity does create different timbres. So by multi-sampling those different intensities and actually getting a sample of it, you can actually create much more realistic playability, much more realistic sounds, and they've connected it with velocities, which is kind of the norm with multi-sampling. All instruments perfectly integrated into Live's workflow, loaded via Simpler, all right, which is interesting because Sampler definitely has much richer sampling potential, but we'll see how that's implemented here. So I'm just making some notes for myself to look up the simpler aspect of this. All instruments take advantage of smart priming. I'm not familiar with that. Live's new resource-efficient sample engine. Okay, so it's probably just a memory management, RAM management tweak that Ableton's come up with so that they can load in massive sample libraries and not have most people's computers choke on it. Allowing users to work with an impressive number of instruments in their compositions. Great. Includes special rack versions of each instrument with all articulations switchable via a single macro control. Okay, so instead of key switches, which is the more traditional, this is using macros, which are the little knobs on like a group rack and also on the push. So I'll see how that's set up on the push, see if we can do that effectively so that you can switch articulations in real time. So I've become used to using key switches. I'm not sure if using a rotary macro is really going to do the job well, but whatever. What you may also like, these are other sound packs that kind of give us a hint. Of course, orchestral brass, some more ensemble strings, big band essentials. So, obviously just more orchestral stuff is what they're saying. So this is obviously orchestral. Let's listen to some demos. So, I mean, that's pretty convincing. That's pretty good quality. Let's listen to another one here. It's a little stiff. That's quite stiff. I mean, it's nice, but probably wouldn't even fool the average moviegoer very well. Listen to the viola section. So these are ensembles. It's funny. I can see that not a lot of people have actually brought up these demos. I would imagine, and I mean maybe this is unfair, but I would imagine that a lot of let me just actually make an adjustment here on my camera. I'll be back in just about 2 seconds. All right, there. I think that's a little better. Sorry, lost my monitor here. I like to have a way to kind of see what I'm doing. If I can't see my own feedback, then I'm not always sure that there's a good feed for you guys to see. Anyways, now I have that back up. So yeah, I was gonna say that maybe this is unfair, but I think a lot of serious composers aren't looking at Ableton maybe as a way of drafting ideas. I'm not saying that it's not a good match and can't be a good match. I actually use Machine a lot, and I doubt that a lot of people are using Machine for like serious cue composition for like TV and film or game music. I think it's just the nature of the traditional linear DAW that appeals to those folks, because many of them maybe have more traditional backgrounds. So I'm not at all saying Ableton isn't a good tool for the job, but I would suspect that these libraries are a little underused, and that actually may play to my advantage and your advantage if you're into making orchestral music, because one of the things that a lot of libraries, like licensing libraries and stuff like that, start to recognize is that, you know, some of these sounds are just, I don't know, they're like borderline tired. Everybody's heard them. They're the same libraries. So having a library like this that's not that well known, maybe not that widely used, could be an advantage to get some sonic character. And one thing in particular I'm thinking I would probably do here is, at the very least, I'm going to attempt certainly to compose top to bottom with Ableton, with these libraries, see what I can do. But if I were to layer these in with my existing libraries, things like Contact, VSL, then I think I could get even richer and more interesting sounds by layering them, just like you do with layering kicks or any other kind of layering that you do in the sampling world. You get a richer, more interesting, more innovative and personal original sound. So even if I find that this library fell short of, you know, being the be-all end-all library for really professional orchestral music production, layering it in, it sounds certainly convincing enough that this is not going to distract or diminish any of my compositions. This is a nice, rich, solid sounding library. So the first thing I want to look at is, let's just look at some of the sound options here. Okay, so get rid of my pencil here. And all right, let's switch on over to this push view. All right, so I'm going to load up, let's see, I've got a MIDI track here, go down to packs. And we are on orchestral strings. There we are. Let me just do one more check here before we continue. I want to make sure that everything is working out the way that I want it to work out for the live stream. Sometimes if I can't see all the details on the live stream, you know, that's really no good. So it looks like it's all online. Looks good. Cool. All right, so let's go back to Ableton. And what we're going to do, starting out here, look at some of these orchestral string samples and some of their sounds. So let's start with sounds. Start with violin. So I can see they actually have a sound for like different articulations. Legato, pizzicato, staccato. There's an ensemble, solo violin. Right, so I'll load up pizzicato here just to hear. Turn on accent. Okay, so you'll notice that like this pad doesn't make any sound. That's because it's out of the range, right? Violins don't play that pitch. If you want that pitch, you probably want to switch to like a viola. So I could go down, let's go to packs again. So the viola is a lower range instrument than the violin. Orchestral strings, I'm going to go to sounds. I'm going to go to viola and solo pizzicato viola. Let's see now. Excuse me. So the violin has a higher range, and then the viola has a lower range. If you run into a situation like, okay, now that doesn't work, now I'd have to switch to a cello. It's pretty straightforward. So these are like the instruments, and they sound all right. But what I want to investigate now is the ability to switch between these, because that's really important, being able to switch between different articulations. And also there are some articulations in here that I think are missing. Let's just go under violin. Legato, pizzicato, staccato. Legato, pizzicato, staccato. So that's it. That's all. That we only get 3. Legato, pizzicato, staccato. We don't have any other articulations. There are definitely some others that we would need to do like really professional orchestration and production. So that's a limitation here. We do not, I'm going to make a note to myself about that you know, you have limited articulations. That's one potential drawback here over some other sound libraries that I've used. Let's go up to the samples. So we have combined samples. So I think, you know, they had turn off preview. So they had mentioned in the web page that they offer these as samplers, right? So I'm kind of imagining here that if I go into combined, I'm actually just getting these are actual recordings. These are actually samples. So maybe these are the samples that the sounds that the racks are built off of. Maybe not. Turn preview back on. So it's a little robotic. I'm sure there's controls in here for like attack and release to open things up a little bit. So there are some controls here. I can't imagine really using this in like a live performance, the kind of live performance I typically would do with push. That would be much more like electronic, but I can see that there are some nice controls here for just manipulating the sound a little bit. The release volume, that's nice. So on the release, when I'm done with the note, what's the volume of that release? It's different from release time. So if I bring release time down. That kind of gives ambient context to this sound, which I kind of dig. I like that. But let's look at using this. Let's say that we actually record. You know, put together just a quick simple idea here. So I'm gonna go. I've got my string ensemble here, and I'm gonna go to my clip view, and let's see. I'm gonna go record that, and put on my metronome. All right, so there I'm going to go ahead and start the loop there. Oops, loop position actually there. Start, it's the same place, so start loop. I'm going to bring the loop length down to 8 bars, so I've got this. So you'll notice that this bottommost MIDI note doesn't play, and you'll notice that that's because if I were to zoom in here, actually let's just go over to the Mac so that I can pull up Ableton. And what we can see here is this note right here needs to be tightened up there. So I could just go back to the push, do quantize like that, and then that brought everything back up to the right spot. Now when I'm back here on the push, I hear that first note, right? So I just have a simple 8-bar loop. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add, let's say, a device here. Going to pick a cello. Going all the way down to the O's for orchestral strings. Sounds I'm using. I'm going to go to cello. I'm going to want legato. Yeah, I'm going to go with cello. And I'm gonna switch to staccato. Well, yeah, staccato. All right, and I'm gonna use a feature here of an arpeggiator, right? So I'm gonna bring my octave down. So sorry, wrong page. And there's not a lot of sustain on those, but that's what I want. If I add a MIDI device here, I'm going to add arpeggiator. Right. So now I'm going to go in here, session, record. We're looking at my clip. A little touchy. All right, so I'm going to quantize that again, just so that it makes it easy. I wouldn't normally want to really quantize these things, but in Ableton it makes it easier to manipulate the clips here. So I'm going to start this up here, there. And I guess 4-bar loop should be good. So I've got the same problem here. I'm going to crop the loop. Oops. I can't do that right now because the hang on, the display had gotten a little contorted there. So you know this MIDI note is not quantizing to the beat, so I'm going to hold down quantize. So right now it's quantizing the 16th, and I'm going to put it on to quarter, hit quantize again. Now it quantizes right to the beat. So All right. So a very simple idea here that that we've got going on. Let me just make sure that the live stream's still going strong. Everybody can see what I'm hoping they see. So let's look at maybe using these key switches. I'm going to add in another MIDI track here, and go down to my packs. I'm going to add a viola here. I think I've got a violin section and a cello section. Orchestral strings. And there's other orchestrals, mallets and woodwinds. We'll get into those at another time. So I'm not going to use the samples. I'm going to pull up viola and bring in Pizzicato just because we haven't done that yet. Right. And if we look at sampler, I'm not really sure what they mean by I can change articulations using the macro. So let's dig a little deeper into that, figure out what that really means. So I'm going to go to Ableton and Ableton Orchestral Strings. All right. So they talk about include special rack versions of each instrument with all articulations switchable via a single macro. So if I've got my viola here, I can come down here. I'm gonna be mainly looking at this section down here. If I open up my device chains, let's go up to strings here, samples and sounds. If I were to load that up, the top, that's just an audio clip. Yes, that's just an audio file. All of these are AIF files. That's not what I want. And when I go in here and I'm looking at string ensembles, you know, viola section, which is what I had, I think, on this channel, down here, I don't really see the articulation switchable. I'm not sure how that works. I mean, one option would be to take well, I mean, there is an option here. I wonder if I were to take, okay, this is the viola pizzicato. If I were to take the viola section legato, I'm going to turn off the preview. So I've got viola section pits right here. If I took legato and I dragged that down into my device chain, see what that happens. So now I've got that. I could change between these two. So if let me copy over my simple arpeggiated cello line here. Do an option drag. Get rid of that. So I'm not hearing anything here from the cello, and that's probably actually because the range is too low. So I dragged it from the cello onto viola, so I could grab a MIDI effect here like pitch, And I could go ahead and bring that down here to just bring whatever up. Okay, so there we go. And if I were to have the same arpeggiator ahead of it, well, actually I won't worry about that because this sounds nice anyway. But now if I were to, here's the pizzicato version, right? So I can call that Pitz, and now I'm playing the Pitz version. All I'm doing here is I am soloing. So and then I could potentially make changing this chain a matter of a macro, right? So map this macro here to my chain value. And then, sorry, there we go, map. So now, it comes around again, I guess. Boy, that's an awfully long loop, isn't it? So I'm sorry that I'm missing something here, but I'm going to make this a little shorter so that I can manipulate it more. Just hitting Command D, duplicate that out. Gonna set the clip over here, just so that I have some kind of like rapid fire note thing that's happening, you know. And now when I'm back on this end, when I adjust my chain selector, so I can change, I can actually rename this to articulation, right? And then when I come back here to my viola section, you can see that, let's go, now I have this articulation value. So I got pizzicato, legato. So they're kind of claiming that, you know, that would be set up for you. I'm not really seeing that evidence right off the bat. Maybe I'm obviously missing it, or they're just saying this is possible. But I can imagine that however they've set it up, it's probably based on that idea. Device chains, you've got multiple chains, and then you're using a macro to change the chain, the chain. You're to select the chain, which is an awesome way to do a lot of different effects. If you want to morph between, you know, like this actually would be another cool thing we could do. We could take, let's say some other effect that is much more let's take, I'm just gonna demo through a few things here. So take this completely unrelated dual tubas, and I'm going to add that to the chain, and then I'm going to bring this over here, right? So what this is going to do now is, as I play, I can morph between the pizzicato, and it's going to slowly kind of morph into the dual tubas. And you could actually fade in like that, fade out like that. See, oops. So you get more. You're going to get less and less and less of the pizzicato viola and more of this dual tubas. But you could use this for a lot if you want a lot of other applications, not just strings, but maybe a situation, you know, where you want to blend between two synth patches, that sort of thing. All right, so let's take a look at this over here. So going back to my viola section. So there's a little bit of overlap there. I'm going to actually switch it because the legato is a much more natural fit to go over this tuba sound. So let's do it like this, right? And then we are looking at roughly this range from 45 to 55 roughly. Let's listen to that. Whoops, not that. The viola section. So I'm getting both here where there's overlap. I'm getting both that dual tubas patch. Now I'm just getting the legato. Something, oh, I lost it. There you go. I was going the wrong way. So it's not really holding, it's not sustaining the tone, but that's not the worst thing. So there's actually quite a lot you can do with this software and with this particular pack. So let me just bring this up. Again, I'm really sorry for some of the clumsiness here on this display, but I really find it distracting when I'm not sure exactly what y'all are seeing, and sometimes my monitor dies out, and that's just the way it is. Anyway, to summarize, this is intended for making like realistic sounding orchestral string parts. Not too much surprise there. It's using simpler, so very easy to manipulate within push if you want to manipulate the samples at all. It doesn't seem to be really doing key switching, but they kind of worked around key switching, which is the traditional method for switching articulations in strings. They're kind of working around that by using macros and probably the device chain setup that I just demonstrated. I think for myself, I probably wouldn't use this library for the finished product. I think what would be great is to use it as an idea, a way to capture ideas, right? Because Ableton makes it so easy to capture a little musical idea, a little melody, maybe a chord progression, a harmonic progression. I might use Ableton for that, and it's nice to hear something that sounds convincingly strings. But then I would take those ideas, ultimately take that MIDI and drive it through. Probably I would, for commercial purposes, I would drive it through a more professional sound library. But as I said earlier, I think there would be a lot of value in blending the two. So taking, my other libraries, running the MIDI through those libraries and this, layering them together to get richer sounds. All my other libraries offer legato and pizzicato and staccato, but they'll offer other articulations like sforzando, for example, and or vibrato, tremolo. So those can be really, really important when you're trying to write professional, expressive, orchestral music, and layering these in wherever the articulations match could just be a way to kind of fatten things up, create some more interesting sounds. I could imagine if I worked out the final arrangement, say in Cubase, then I could use Rewire to get these particular samples into Cubase. I don't have to do the production top to bottom in Ableton in order to use these samples. So if you have any questions about using this pack, please reach out to me. I'm going to be doing this every Monday, Wednesday, Friday until I've worked through all these packs, and then I'll probably get to work on my native instruments and Cubase libraries, which are just as extensive. So I will see you on Friday for the next episode. Please reach out to me if you have questions. Again, I'm Will from Music Protest, and thanks for watching. All right, see you later.